I'm Alicia.
And I'm Liam. We both have OCD, and instead of spiraling alone, we decided to turn our symptoms into a podcast. You're welcome.
Here, we overshare real stories, laugh through the anxiety, and talk to actual experts who can explain why your brain keeps asking, what if I accidentally marry my cousin?
Whether your thing is hand washing, mental rituals, or just silently panicking during normal conversations, congrats. You have found your people.
This is a safe place, unless you're an intrusive thought, in which case, get in line, buddy. We're booked.
So grab a weighted blanket, cancel your plans for the 5th time, and let's dive in. This is the OCD Confessional.
And yes, we did check this recording 4 times before uploading it.
Okay, we are so excited today for our conversation with renowned child psychologist Dr. Eli Lebowitz, who is a specialist in the field of OCD and has a really interesting approach to treating it in children. We're going to get into that in a moment, but first, we've got some really big news here on the OCD Confessional. No CD is
Take a chance on me. No CD.
Oh my God, that should be their jingle.
See, they didn't know they were hiring multi-talented people here, Liam. We write jingles.
We can do it all. And that is the headline. No CD is our first official sponsor of the OCD Confessional. We are so excited. They are the first and largest virtual therapy platform specifically for OCD. And it really opens up access to people because Alicia, you've been going through this, and I have friends who've gone through it. I went through it when I was trying to find a therapist. It can be really hard to find one. And then you do find one. They don't necessarily specialize in OCD, or they're out of network or something. So you're listening, you go, I've been meaning to talk to someone about this. You can just go to nocd.com and schedule a free 15-minute consultation.
It was so easy. I did that. I went through it, and you can schedule a time, and then if your schedule changes, it was no hassle. I went on, changed my time. Something came up with the boys, and I was like, oh crap, I can't make it. And it's in 15 minutes. They were like, no sweat, no stress. This is no stress zone. And so I was able to switch that. And then I had my 15-minute call, and she was lovely. And then we scheduled my session for the following week.
I've had a friend that reached out, ended up going through NoCD, getting a diagnosis. She had spent 35 years not knowing why she was struggling, what was going on with her. And now she has an official diagnosis and a treatment plan, and it has totally changed her life. And when you and I started this little thing a couple of months ago, the idea that we would be partnering with NoCD, honestly, when we were texting and we were first coming up with this idea for the show and what we wanted it to be, I think you said to me, like, do you eventually want to find sponsors or advertisers? And I was like, if 5 people listen to this show,
Yeah.
and one of them get something out of it, that's a win.
Let alone people that are gonna, want to partner, which has just been it's been a dream come true, honestly.
So
Yeah.
when we got this news, Alicia and I had been, going back and forth with the people at NoCD who are so awesome. Shout out to Andrea and Elisa. When we were going back and forth with them, Alicia and I were chatting and then finally got the agreement done. I should have been really excited. And I texted Alicia and I was like, this is a classic moment where we've done something really cool.
Uh-huh.
We've had people, dozens and dozens of our listeners reaching out to us saying that we've really helped. We have NoCD, this fantastic company wanting to partner with us. And this should be a moment where I feel really excited and validated, and none of that was available to me.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, and I was kind of picking up on that a little bit. And you try, you were, you wanted to celebrate with me, and you're sending us these little milestone marks that we've hit. But I could sense, and I know you well enough now to know. And I asked you, I said, are you able to actually celebrate this with me? And how are you feeling in this moment? And you were like, I want to, and I feel like I'm close, but it just doesn't hit like it should. And you know the feeling that you should be having because you've experienced, joy in your life before. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm wondering if it's because you've shared that you're on meds. Do you think that it's partially due to your medication? Because, you hear a lot about people just feeling numb. They don't want to feel the lows, but they're also not able to feel the highs. And I think that that's maybe playing a role. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've wondered that same thing. And it's probably worth talking to my psychiatrist about and saying, is that possibly it? But if I'm being honest, accessing that joy has been a problem for most of my life. What happens is I'll work really, really hard on something. And I imagine during the whole process of working on it, whether it was trying to get good grades in school or getting into Harvard or getting my first TV job and getting my first anchor job, like all these milestones in life, I would hit each one thinking this will be the thing that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I'll be able to actually get excited about this because I worked so hard and it is an accomplishment. And I just never could access it. It was always this sense of maybe a little blip of like, yay, validation, whatever. And then it was right into, okay, so what do I need to do next
What's next?
to keep accomplishing, to keep proving to myself that I'm not a piece of shit? And this is one that only recently occurred to me is part of my OCD. It is achievement OCD. I was looking up what is achievement OCD, and it was all the stuff. It's the perfectionism. It is when you accomplish something, you don't really feel the sense of accomplishment that should come with it. You're on to the next thing. That's one where I don't know what to do with that because I was sitting across from Leah while you and I were texting. And I said, I should be so excited right now. No CD is just, it's a great company. It is such a perfect partnership for us. And I'm just not excited. Like I'm excited about them. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for our show. I just instantly was like, okay, I got to get the ad done for No CD. I want to make sure we're a really good partner.
Right.
And just didn't take the moment to go, let me breathe and enjoy
And
this.
it's such an interesting feeling too, to know that you should feel a certain way about something. And instead you're then battling, well, now I should be feeling that. And why aren't I? And then you're stuck in that feeling. And it just makes you kind of take a step back and go, well, what's the point of all this if I can't feel it?
Yes.
Right. And so then let me ask you, Liam, what keeps you going?
Oh my gosh. God, I don't know.
Because it's not the money. That's never been our why, our motivator.
I think it is, oh man, it's a mix of things. With this specifically, it is a mix of, I do know somewhere in here that this is helping people. And so I want to continue that. I love our conversations. You know, when we're sitting here together on a Friday, talking, you and I, and then a guest comes in, I thoroughly enjoy all of that. And so I would want to continue to do it for that reason. But I think overarchingly, it's just this drive to continue to try to find that contentment. And no matter how many times I achieve and don't get the contentment, I sort of convince myself the next time I will. And I don't think I ever actually will unless I change my relationship with those achievements.
That's it. And understanding that if you allow yourself to feel it, that's not going to take away from your drive and motivation. Right? Because your drive and motivation is based, you've told yourself, I will feel it if I keep going, which is a false illusion. Like you're telling yourself, I need to keep going because I will then maybe potentially feel this, but it doesn't. So maybe, I don't know. That's tricky.
I think what happens is there's this little blip of excitement or sort of, yes, you know, we got to this milestone. And then that OCD voice comes right in and says, well, yeah, but you got there because you worked really, really hard and you were obsessed with it and you better continue to do that. And if you take a moment right now to enjoy this, you're taking your eye off the ball and then you're going to fail. And then you are a failure. So that's what's going to happen. If you don't apply maximum effort, that's what's going to happen. And it's such a stupid, idiotic voice.
Well, someone who has spent a career studying why this happens is our next guest, Dr. Eli Lebowitz. He joins us from New Haven, Connecticut, where he is a professor and clinician at the Yale Child Study Center and one of the leading experts in the world on child and adolescent anxiety and OCD. If you've spent any time looking into family-based treatment for anxiety, you've probably come across his groundbreaking work. Dr. Lebowitz is the creator of SPACE, Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions, a parent-based treatment approach that has completely reshaped how clinicians, families, and caregivers think about helping children who struggle with anxiety and OCD. It's evidence-based, accessible, and for so many families, truly life-changing. Dr. Lebowitz brings not only deep professional expertise, but also lived experience, advocacy, and decades of clinical work with families navigating anxiety, OCD, and related challenges. He's the author of the widely respected book, Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD, and he has a new book coming soon, Breaking Free of Picky Eating. We'll be talking with him today about the heart of his work, why parent-based treatment is so powerful, what actually helps kids move through anxiety, and how families can reduce patterns that unfortunately keep symptoms alive, and what hope looks like in real-world homes. Please help us welcome Dr. Eli Lebowitz. We're excited to chat with you. I am a mother of two, and I know so many parents out there are struggling at home with what the heck is going on with their child. And you are an expert. I have listened to so many of your podcasts. You're incredible. Eli Lebowitz. I want to start quickly. I did read that maybe you had a little lived experience yourself. Is that correct?
I'll tell you a story from when I was a kid. This is like many years ago, right? I was like maybe 7 years old, and I was at my aunt's house, and she was a big subscriber to, I don't know, are they still around? Good Housekeeping? Yeah, still exists. Okay, I've not seen one in decades, but she was like a big subscriber. She had like piles of them, and so I was reading Good Housekeeping, and there was a story in there about a kid with OCD. Now, I didn't know the term OCD at all. I didn't know anything about it, but this freaked me out so bad because I did have some of those thoughts. It wasn't terrible. I wasn't, really, really impaired by it. I was just like disturbed by it. But reading about it and the way it was described as this voice in this kid's head that's getting better and taking over his life, I think as an adult, if a parent read that, it actually was helpful to them to like understand a little bit of OCD. And probably that was the point of the article, because not a lot of people knew about it, right? We're talking about the 80s. But for me as a child reading it, it actually freaked me out and made my OCD a lot worse.
Oh no! Now you're really in your head.
Yeah, right. Because like, when does it completely take over? Right? Like, I know that's going to happen. So when is that happening? And it actually started this cascade of like worse OCD for a while. And I've never had severe OCD, but I've always had some. And another way that I have some lived experience, actually, and I hope you wouldn't object to my saying this, but one of my children, I have 3 boys, and one of them also developed some OCD, and actually kind of an incredible experience for me. On the negative side, it took me a lot longer than it should have to realize that. You would think that maybe I would be quick to realize that. And I actually wasn't that quick to realize it until like he eventually talked to me about it. But on the positive side, when I was talking to him about like, do you want to work with somebody on this? And he actually wanted to do that with me. And we just set up like a therapy session, a regular standing session, which is probably not what you would recommend, right? Like, I'm not saying, hey, if you have a child with a mental health challenge, you should be their therapist. I don't know that I would recommend that in general. It's probably not, the smartest thing, but actually a really beautiful experience for me to be able to help him through that and work with him on it. And just, it's like a kind of way of connecting with your child that, I hadn't had before and I don't take for granted. And so in a strange way, I kind of cherish that, that experience. So I have different kinds, I suppose, of lived experience, if you will, with OCD, and also a longstanding professional interest.
What an amazing gift that you got in that way, because I, as a parent, really am freaked out about the idea that I'm going to pass this on to my kids. I have a daughter and a son, and I'm constantly watching for signs of OCD in them. We do know that it is hereditary to some extent, that the brain of someone with OCD has some differences from someone without. So I'm always watching for it. And what an amazing gift that even though it maybe took you longer than you wanted it to, you were eventually able to identify it and then have the skills because of your expertise to actually help your kid in a really direct way. I think that's unbelievable. Do you mind if we ask how it was showing up for him?
He was about 10, 11, around when this was really happening. And so a lot of like repeating rituals, kind of going back, walking places, trying to like step carefully, maybe go back and do it again another way. The obsessive thoughts were kind of vague, something bad luck, things like that. It wasn't like and like I said, it wasn't the most severe OCD, which of course I'm grateful for him and for me, but a lot of that kind of some evening out style rituals, repetition, some numbers, like that sort of domain of symptom cluster.
So you've pioneered this approach called space, and I want to talk about this. And your experience with your child probably helped you create this space. We can dive into that. What does it stand for? Can you explain it in its simplest terms?
Sure. Yeah. Space. First of all, it stands for supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions. So that's what it stands for, but that is a mouthful. And so generally, I do tend to just say space. At its heart, space is a completely parent-based approach to treating anxiety, OCD, increasingly some other related conditions as well. And it's all about parents learning to respond to their child's distress, to their symptoms, their anxiety, with two key changes, really. It's about helping parents to make two key changes in how they respond to their child. One is to be more supportive in your response, right? Support is right there in the name of the treatment. It's supportive parenting. So to be more supportive, meaning to be accepting of what they're experiencing, but also to have confidence that they can tolerate a little bit of distress, that they can handle and cope with some difficult feelings sometimes. And so that's one thing, is to be more supportive. And the other is to pull back and reduce some of the very natural, but ultimately unhelpful accommodations of the child's symptoms. Almost every parent who has a child with OCD or other anxiety problems will find themselves accommodating those symptoms. And that's very natural.
One example of accommodating, real quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but would be like if a child is scared of something at night and needs the father to come in and reassure them that there is no monster 100 times, that's accommodating because we want our child to rest peacefully, but really that's reassuring and making the problem worse. Because now this child is not going to be able to go to bed without the dad coming in 100 times.
Exactly.
Okay.
You might be doing a lot of that kind of reassuring. If your child has OCD, sometimes you're doing some of their rituals with them, or you're checking something. You left the house, but wait, I'm not sure about this. Okay, fine. We'll go back and I'll confirm for you again. Or I won't say that word that makes you uncomfortable because it's like a bad word for you. Or, like we mentioned, the evening out kind of thing. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, you touched my right shoulder. Well, do you mind touching my left shoulder also so that it feels symmetrical for me? And like a lot of different moments where you might find yourself in small ways and sometimes in really big ways accommodating. Again, really normal, really natural, but ultimately unhelpful to the child because it tends to, just like doing a ritual, if you have OCD, doing your rituals will make you feel better right then, but is going to maintain that problem longer. The accommodation is kind of the same. It helps in that moment. Your child feels a little bit better, but also it tends to maintain the problem and grow it over time rather than the opposite.
And what is so messed up about that is that is such a natural instinct for the parent to do that.
Right.
The child is sitting in their bed. Let's say they're terrified of the dark. A lot of kids have that.
Yep.
Your instinct as a parent is, I'm going to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
That's like your number one job as a parent, is make your kid feel safe, make sure they're fed, physically safe. That's it. That's like the baseline job. And what you are telling this parent is you cannot do that with this child because you are feeding the beast. And is that why you decided, because what's so unique about space is the child is not in the therapy session. You're just with the parents. Why did you decide to do it that way, where instead of having the kid with the parents in the room all together, you just said, no, we just need to focus on the parents?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that in a second. But first of all, I do want to say what you said is like, it's exactly right? Like it goes against your natural instinct not to be doing that thing. But the thing with all different forms of anxiety problems, like anxiety disorders, is that they are hijackers. Anxiety disorders, including OCD, they are hijackers, meaning they will take a natural, adaptive, healthy, and even beautiful system that is built into us, but they'll hijack it. So now it becomes a problem, right? Like, having fear is a natural thing. We're supposed to be afraid sometimes. Now you have an anxiety disorder. That system is hijacked. The parental instinct to comfort, to soothe, to reassure, to protect, those are beautiful instincts that are vulnerable to hijacking by the anxiety disorders. And that's why when you have the problem, that's why you need to sometimes fight that instinct a little bit.
Well, the parent has to then be uncomfortable with the child.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
You have to be uncomfortable.
Resist the urge yourself to go fix what you know is causing pain to your child is a really, really tough thing to do. I have a girlfriend whose child has to line up all his dolls in the correct order before he goes to bed. And we were talking about the podcast and she was like, is this OCD? And I said, well, I'll bring it up, because what happens if you don't line up the dolls? She's like, well, he won't go to sleep and he'll cry. He will freak out and I can't have that. So what you're saying is she needs to let him freak out. She needs to let him go, I can't believe you're doing this, Mom. Why are you doing? And I think that's why it's super important that our kids know that they have OCD and they know what's going on and they're not left in the dark. And I'm not just trying to torture you. That is why a proper diagnosis is huge, huge. So now we can talk about this as a family. I'm going to support you. I'm going to do what I can do to support you. Here's what's going on in your brain. Here's why it's happening. I'm not going to just walk out of the room, leave your stuffies in a mess and let you sit there and feel tortured. I'm letting you know and I'm acknowledging why you're feeling this way and here's why and back it up with some knowledge.
100%.
Right?
100%. Space is not about leaving your kid in the lurch, right? It's not about, I don't care anymore, and so I'm not helping you. And
you just walk in and mess up the stuff.
Right, I walk in and mess up the dolls, right? Like you throw your dolls around and like, good night, kid. No, that's...
Right. Well, how do you explain? Well, if the parents are focusing only on themselves, when the kid is struggling and we're in therapy and we're learning about space, how do you suggest that we have those conversations with our children?
Yeah. Well, parents in space, first of all, the first couple of weeks that you're doing space, you're not even changing those accommodations. You're just letting your child hear those supportive messages. You might still be doing the accommodation, but you know what? Even while you're arranging those dolls at night, you're lining them all up just perfect till it seems just right. But you might be saying to your kid, I get it. It makes you really uncomfortable if your doll's out of place. But you know what? I want you to know, I actually think you could handle that. And I'm still doing it right now, right? But I'm letting you hear that once and again and again. You're hearing this message because what you're doing, you're holding up a mirror to your child, a mirror for themselves, to see themselves, rather than seeing themselves as a child who is helpless, vulnerable, weak in the face of whatever their distress or symptom is doing to them. They start to see themselves as, well, my parent sees me as someone who's a little bit stronger. My parent sees me as someone who can cope. That's right. And then gradually you start reducing those accommodations. But the first thing you do is you tell your child. Actually, in space, parents write their child a letter and they'll read it to them. And they'll say in a really loving, caring, compassionate way, I get it that this is so hard for you, but I don't think I'm helping you when I arrange your dolls every single night. I don't actually think that's helping you. I'm not giving you the chance to see that you could be okay, that you could get through a night, even if a doll is out of place. And so, you know what? Starting tomorrow night, I'm actually not going to do that. And this, I
Right,
know it's going
giving
to
them
be
a heads
hard.
up.
Giving them a
Giving them a
heads
heads up.
up.
I love that. A
And
heads
what
up on
I'm not
everything.
saying, and you know what you don't hear me saying is, you have to not arrange your dolls, or you're not allowed to arrange your dolls, or I'm going to mess up your dolls, right? We're not saying that, right? Like, I know that child might still go and arrange them for themselves, but they know that their parent believes that they're actually stronger than that they could handle that.
Yes.
And it makes a huge difference. Now, you asked before, like, okay, why did we just go with only parent and not like put the whole family or the child and the parent? There's actually a couple of reasons for that, but one reason is that not every child wants to go to therapy.
My son does not.
Mhm.
He refuses, and that has been a very challenging thing in this house.
It's so hard. It's so hard. You go to the therapist, you go to the doctor, and they're like, okay, bring your child in and I'll try to help. And they're like, yeah, but he doesn't want to come in. And then the therapist says, so what do you want me to do? Right? So,
Yeah.
so what are you doing here? How am I supposed to help you? But if they are trained in space, if they know this treatment, then they say, that's fine. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to help you because you matter. Yeah, it's great if your child's going to therapy. I'm not like, no one's against that. It's wonderful if your child's going to therapy. But
Mhm.
I think that for a long time, parents of kids with OCD and a lot of other problems, they were relegated to the role of like a helpless bystander. My child has this problem. It breaks my heart, and there's nothing I can do about it. I think parents can be so much more empowered to say, like, actually, I can do something about it. And even if my child is saying, you know what, I don't want your help, I'm still going to help them, right? Like, if your kid had I don't know, if your kid had appendicitis and didn't want your help, you wouldn't say, well, I offered,
Right.
I offered, but, they didn't really go for the appendectomy. So what are you going to do?
You're on your own.
You're on your own, kiddo, right?
Good
Like,
analogy.
hey, nobody said I didn't offer. No, nobody would say that. Nobody would say that. And it turns out that you don't need to say that for OCD either. You don't need to say it for anxiety either. And the irony of it is that if you look at some other problems, we knew this all along, right? Look at treatment for oppositionality, like problematic behaviors, aggression, things like that. People always took for granted that you'd have to work with the parents.
Mhm.
If your kid is like, bad behavior, so to speak, everybody knew you'd have to work with the parents and did that for years and years. But when it came to things like OCD, what is sometimes called internalizing problems, I'm anxious, I have OCD, I'm depressed. The assumption was, no, that's only the
Right.
the child. And it's absurd because those are the problems where parents end up being the most involved.
And they, as you say, can be a real reinforcing mechanism
Yeah.
for that OCD. I just want to go back to the example of the kid arranging his dolls. Let's say you've done the supportive stuff for 2 weeks under the space system, and you've been giving this kid messages over and over. I support you. I believe that you can do this. Okay, tomorrow night, I'm no longer going to help you do the dolls, and I believe that you can handle that. And then it just goes to shit the next night.
Mm-hmm.
Completely freaking out. And the parent is exhausted. And now it's 10 p.m. The kid has school the next day. You have work the next day. You've got a business meeting at 7 a.m. You are out of your mind. What do you do in that moment? Because it's so easy to rearrange the dolls.
Yeah.
And then go to bed.
100%. Yeah, of course. That is, it is a real challenge. And, you can accuse me of a lot of things, but not of being naive. Like, I'm not naive about any of this. Of course, your child can say really hard things. They can keep you up all night. They can get aggressive sometimes.
Yeah.
They can get really angry at you. Or
Yeah.
they can say, you stopped loving me. You don't care about me.
Yeah.
Or I can't live like this. Like, there are a lot of difficult moments. Now,
Yeah.
that's why we make a really detailed and careful plan with the parents for how are you going to handle that? What are the supports that you need as the parent to get through that? What's the right day to start this? Who else do you want to have around in the house for that first night or two that will help you to get through that, to get through that night. And you know what? If you really weren't able to do it and you ended up arranging the dolls because you like, okay, I'm like so done and I just cannot do it. I'm just going to say, okay, we just try again tomorrow.
Good. Yeah.
We're going to try again tomorrow. And, parents think, well, that was a failure because I wasn't able to get them to go to sleep without the dolls. I actually don't think it was a failure because what you're trying to do is not to make them go to sleep without arranging their dolls. That's the wrong way to think about it. What you're trying to do is to show them that you believe that they could. If you were able to, like, you stuck it out for an hour and eventually you needed your sleep. And so you, like, okay, and we try. But did you show them that you think they could handle it? And the fact that you're doing it again tomorrow means that it didn't change your mind. You still believe they can handle it. I have to tell you, if you were to put a camera in the house of people who are doing space, and you're like, like a documentary movie. Actually, there is one. But if you were to film them, I think lots of cases, lots of families, if you stop the film after the first time that they did it or the second time that they did it, anybody watching that movie is going to say, this is the worst treatment ever. Right? Like, this is like a terrible therapy. This guy should go to jail because he's like making life worse for everyone. Like, what is happening? But if you let that camera keep rolling for another night and another time and another week, like a week later, you realize, actually, that was just a hard day. That was just a tough day. And they got through it and they kept going. And things are getting better. Things are improving. Doing this treatment, it is as effective as if you actually got your child to go into therapy themselves. It is no less effective, which is kind of remarkable.
Let's say that the child is not diagnosed with OCD, and this is something that the child does. It's a ritual that he's had for a while. It seems pretty harmless, right? To have your kid line up the stuffies before bed, and it works for everybody, and that's where it starts. That's the first thing that the parent's noticing. If the child does not get a diagnosis of OCD, and if the child, will his OCD symptoms worsen over time if he doesn't get help at a young age?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. A certain amount of ritualized behavior is actually common and normal. It doesn't, not everybody who wants to arrange their dolls a certain way or have a very specific goodnight phrase and kiss and, or read the same bedtime story every single night or, like a certain amount of ritualization and repetition is not necessarily a problem. And it's like, it's something to keep an eye on. It's something to keep an eye on. It's an opportunity to give your child that supportive message so that they hear that you believe it's okay to be a little bit more flexible. But not every child who has that is like, okay, doomed to go on and develop a big problem around it.
I wonder, at what point do we intervene? At what point what signs do we look for where we're like, okay, this is maybe, a little too disruptive with their day-to-day?
I think you look at the main domains of functioning for a child. What is being impacted by this? If the answer ends up being nothing, you're probably fine. If the answer is, like the sleep thing, it's different to say, I need to do things a certain way, or I'm losing 3 hours of sleep every night because I'm so worried and it still doesn't seem right. And I'm fixing it again. And then I'm getting out of bed to check it. And like now you're losing sleep. Losing sleep is a big deal because now, you're going to be more fatigued tomorrow. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be more likely to feel sick. You're going to have difficulty paying attention in school. Like it starts this whole cascade of problems. So that's one domain, is like just your functioning at home, like your appetite, your sleep, your mood, things like that. Another would be, is it affecting the family more broadly? Right? Like, are the siblings starting to have a problem because of this? Is my doing this with you taking away from my time with other things that I need to do? When you look at school functioning, are these behaviors getting in the way of just like being okay in school and going to school and learning and just feeling all right? Is it affecting social life, right? Like my ability to be with other kids, to play with them? Is it becoming a problem there? So the more you start to see like, yeah, it's impacting here and here and here, the more you start to think, okay, this seems like it's a problem that should probably be addressed. If it's not really doing any of that, I would say, sure, keep an eye on it, but you're probably okay.
Are there questions you should be asking your kid in that moment if they're at an age where they can really verbalize things? So, for instance, my son and daughter, actually both, she's 11, he's 8. They have a very specific set of phrases that they want mom and dad to say when they sleep. And it's certain nightmares they don't want to have. So my wife will go through a list and be like, please don't have nightmares about this, this, this. It is scary stuff they happen to see on YouTube or whatever. And if you don't say it, they notice and they're like, I need you to say the good night stuff. They call it their dream catcher. I've wondered a little bit if there's a little tinge of OCD with how they approach that. But are there certain questions that we should be asking them about some of these things we've noticed? Like, let's say your kid has that, or a fear of the dark, or they need to align things in a certain way. To me, the difference always was, okay, does this kid want to arrange things in a certain order because it makes them feel at ease or whatever? Or is it because they think that if it's not arranged that way, someone's going to die?
Right. Is it anxiety versus OCD?
Right. So questions that we should be asking those kids in that moment. Like, why is this so important to you? What do you think might happen if we don't do it this way?
Those are good questions. Like, what do you think would happen? What is the fear? Another kind of question that can sometimes help to make that distinction between a more typical worry and a more of like an obsessive one is, how much does it feel like you are thinking it? Or how much does it feel like your brain is telling you this? Something else is putting this thought into your how much does it feel? This is what psychologists call ego dystonic versus ego syntonic, right? Like, how much does it feel like me versus how much does it seem like it's like, I don't want to have this thought, but I do, right? Like, I can't make myself stop having this thought. And that sometimes is useful. But another thing that you could just ask them is, does this bother you? Do you ever wish that you could go to sleep without having to go through your dream thing? And sometimes they'll say like, yeah, you know what? It's annoying that I got to make you do it every night.
Should Leah stop? Would your recommendation be for them to stop telling them this before bed?
I think it's okay to have rituals, right? That it's normal. It's human, right? We all do have rituals. So it's not like, oh, if something is a ritual, you have to stop it, and that's terrible. That's not the case. I think it's good to have rituals with a little bit of flexibility, right? Like to remember that violating the ritual is not catastrophe.
Yeah,
Right?
I think about the fact that they have sleepovers with their cousins or occasionally with friends, and we don't get a call from them saying, can you do the dream catcher?
Exactly.
I feel like that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is a good sign. That's exactly what I mean by don't, like, is it impacting functioning, right? Like if they would say like, oh, I can't go to sleepovers because how am I going to do my dream catcher? Well, okay, now you get impact. That's what, that's impairment. That's now it's impacting your social life. And so I think it's okay to have some rituals. And it's good for there to be some flexibility. Or you can do the good housekeeping test. You give them the article from the 80s and see if it gets better or worse. That's
And now, a word from our sponsor. The same distressing, unwanted thoughts keep playing over and over in your mind. The same rituals keep eating up your time, holding you back from enjoying your life. You've tried talk therapy before and spent session after session diving into those thoughts, trying to understand them, trying to fix them, but somehow they just get worse. And the shame piles on because you think, why isn't this working? What's wrong with me? If this sounds familiar, here's what you need to know. You are not the problem. You're experiencing something that a lot of people with OCD experience. Getting your life back is possible because OCD is highly treatable. It just requires a completely different approach than other mental health conditions. In fact, standard talk therapy often makes OCD worse because it encourages you to analyze those intrusive thoughts or try to replace them with positive ones. But with OCD, the more attention you give the thoughts, the stickier they become. That's where no CD comes in. NoCD provides virtual therapy designed specifically for OCD. Every single one of their therapists is extensively trained in a type of therapy called ERP, or exposure and response prevention, which is the most effective treatment available for OCD. And they get their training from world-renowned OCD experts, so they truly understand what you're dealing with, even the stuff that feels impossible to say out loud. In live, face-to-face virtual sessions, your NoCD therapist will teach you how to take the power away from intrusive thoughts so you can live the life you want to live. In between sessions, you'll be able to message your therapist anytime, join dozens of live support groups, and continue your progress with other expert-developed therapy tools. NoCD is also covered by insurance for over 138 million Americans, and their team makes it really simple to get started. Visit nocd.com and book a free 15-minute call. That's nocd.com to learn more and talk to someone who can help, because you deserve treatment that actually works for OCD. And now, back to our show.
How do siblings fit into all this? Are there specific ways that you recommend including or protecting siblings when one child has severe OCD or anxiety?
I think
It's a tough one in our family.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, maybe
Yeah.
you'll tell me a little bit.
I'll elaborate a little bit on that. Yeah, my son has ADHD, and the younger one likes to throw it in his face a lot and use it and weaponize them. And it's like, well, I try to get both of them to understand what it is and what he needs. You know, he needs brain breaks. He needs less stimulation. He needs calm corner. Like, he needs all these things that the other one doesn't. And they have this relationship that's interesting, where it's competitive in a lot of ways, but it's loving in a lot of ways. So when it comes down to that, when the little one wants to be mean, he'll throw in his face, well, that's just your ADHD, and you blah, 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 and you that, you know. So how would you suggest navigating that?
You know, I have to say there's actually something a little bit nice to me about, paradoxically, to me, that sounds like a story about destigmatizing rather than a story about stigmatizing. Because it's like, it's normal enough for them in their discourse, right? It's like, you know, it's like you'd tease somebody, I don't know, maybe like if he was teasing him for having glasses or something, because it's like, okay, it's like, you know, normal enough in their vocabulary that he would even say it to him, as opposed to if it was like this big, really dramatic, really scary, or really shameful, or really, you know, like super embarrassing thing where there might be a little bit less likelihood of throwing it in his face so easily. And so maybe it sounds like backward what I'm saying, but I think, you know, our species did not evolve over millennia of siblings always being sweet, thoughtful, and considerate to each other at every
Cain and Abel.
yeah, that's right. and so you know, I don't think you have to overreact to the fact that it's like, you know, comes up between them. That being said, yeah, of course, just like with anything, you want to teach them. You want to teach them, well, to be considerate, right? And you want to model that. You want to be thoughtful, and teach them how to be polite and respectful and friendly, etc. One thing that happens a lot, actually, with siblings is that they end up accommodating also. And that,
right. They should be included in space therapy.
Yeah, you know, sometimes if they're old enough to get it, to understand, then sometimes they are, because they can actually find themselves accommodating a lot as well. And sometimes it's, you know, it's just about letting them know that they don't have to do that, that it's okay if they don't.
Both for siblings and for parents. And we're going to have a lot of parents listening to this. They've been asking for a child expert to come on to talk about this. What are some common ways that they end up accommodating the OCD without realizing it?
So sometimes it will be those, you know, those rituals. I think, you know, like doing things a very specific way or doing things a certain number of times. I think it's important, though, to remember that accommodation isn't always something you do. It can also be something you don't do, meaning you've learned to do less of something, or you've learned to avoid doing things because you know it would trigger the OCD. You know your child gets uncomfortable if the window is open because they think there's going to be something coming in or something like that. So you keep the window closed, or there's a topic that if they hear about it, then it's going to trigger the OCD. So you avoid talking about it.
Well, let's use the window down as an example. And let's say that you're trying to expose your child to the things that you've been avoiding. You're like, okay, we're going to tackle this because it's a nice day. I want my window down.
Yeah.
Do you prep them prior to getting in the car, or do you just do it and live with that? Because they're going to fight you the second you tell them they're going to do something.
I think you do. I think it is better to give them a heads up. That maybe you don't have to give a heads up about the specific moment when I'm going to be doing it, but you could say, I'm going to start not keeping the windows up, or say, like, for a specific job, like when we're driving home from school, I'm going to be keeping the windows down because, like I said before, I don't think it's helping you. And yes, there will be that resistance. You might actually want to prepare if you're like, for the specific example of the windows in the car. Like, honestly, there can even be a safety issue because you're doing this in a moving vehicle. And if your child is getting really upset and they're unstrapping their seatbelt and they're climbing into the front to try to put the window up, you could actually have a little bit of a safety issue going on. And you might want to think about that. Like, all right, what's my plan? My plan is I pull over if my child and I wait, or I have another person go with me in the car the first time or two to help out because I'm focused on the driving, but my partner or my sister or somebody can be in the car and help with that. So, we do put a lot of thought into these plans before you actually like do it. But I do think it's better to give that heads up. If you take that opportunity to tell your child what you're going to do, you also get the opportunity to tell them why you're doing it. Whereas if you just go for doing it, you leave it to them to kind of guess. And they don't always guess, Mom is doing this because she thinks this is the best way to help me, even though she knows it's hard, but she believes in me. They might guess, oh, Mom's mad at me, or Mom's fed up with this. She's had it with
She's trying to
this,
punish me.
Yeah, she's trying to punish me. Exactly. And so I want them to know why we're doing it.
In those moments, what does healthy pushback from the kid look like versus we're doing too much too fast? When you start to reduce the accommodations, like, there's going to be pushback from the kid. There's going to be resistance because they're
uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable for sure. And they don't necessarily have that vocabulary that we do at our age to go, okay, what I'm doing is exposing myself and I'm doing exposure and response prevention, whatever. So there's going to be pushback. How much of that is like healthy, and can the parent still accommodate? So that you're going at a pace that isn't going to traumatize the kid.
You're not going to traumatize the kid. I want to be really emphatic about this. You're not going to traumatize the kid by doing this. And I'll tell you why. Because all you want to get to is like the normal. You never want to go beyond that. When you do, we're never going beyond that, right? Like I said, we're not coming in and messing up their dolls. We're just not arranging the dolls. We're not blasting germs in their face. We're just not opening, keeping the window closed.
We're trying to get them back to neutral state.
Right.
Because they are in fight or flight in those moments, and they are thinking worst case scenario.
I don't think you need to worry that you will traumatize the kid. And really the question is not as much, how much can that kid handle without being harmed by it? You won't harm them. If you do this in a thoughtful, way, and you think about it, you're not going to harm the child by doing it. The real question is, how much can you take as the parent? Honestly, that is the bigger question.
Yeah.
What are you up for?
I cannot take much. I know that. When we did sleep training with our kids, both of them, I was a wreck. I was like hugging the pillow, crying myself to sleep, listening to them upset, and my wife was sleeping like an angel. Like she handled it so well. She's a psychologist, so she has a little bit of that background and understanding. I was a wreck. So I know that for me, there's not a whole lot of resilience built in.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And so you figure out, right? Like what do I really think I can do? And sometimes that's like a small step, but you do get through it, and you have to really believe this, that you're not causing them harm. I'm saying this with a lot of confidence to like the parents who are listening.
Mm.
You're not going to harm them by reducing the accommodation. But yes, it can be stressful. It can be difficult, and you do want to kind of brace for some of that pushback. If I came to you and I said, that feeling you have where you feel like you need to breathe air all the time, and you're really addicted to it, right? You really need it in and out all day and night. Well, guess what? I talked to a doctor, and they told me that you don't need to breathe the air. And in fact, it's not even good for you. And so guess what? Because I love you so much, I am turning off your oxygen supply. How would you respond to me? You wouldn't do anything to prevent that, right? You would attack me because I'm turning off your air supply. Now, what I'm saying is, if you say to your child, I'm stopping this accommodation, it might feel to them a little bit like that's what you're saying. And so you have to be really understanding. When they get angry, when they get upset, or if they're crying, or if they're mad at you, don't get mad back at them. You're doing something that's really hard for them. You're not turning off their air. They will not die from it. You will not traumatize them. So in that sense, like, it's not a great metaphor, but you're doing something that's really hard for them. Of course, they're going to have a big reaction. But we've seen this like thousands and thousands of times. That big reaction pretty soon is transformed from that anger or distress into hope.
Yeah.
Because I start to see, as the child, that actually I can do things that I didn't think I can do. I'm not like just going to spend my whole life forever being pushed around by this OCD, subject to every whim that my OCD wants to impose on me. Actually, my parents are right. Here, I didn't think I could get through that car drive. I didn't think I could get through that night, but I did.
Well, and that's why it's so important to trust your parents. And I wonder if a lot of the people that come to see you or that start space have OCD themselves and didn't know it, and they're getting the treatment that they are long overdue for in order to provide the safe place for their kids and mirror their strengths. Because I think a lot of people that I know personally have ADHD, they don't work on it, they don't have the tools, and they're trying to parent a child with ADHD, OCD, anxiety. They trigger each other. They both end up completely shutting down. Meltdowns happen. Nothing gets solved. Everyone feels shame. The house explodes. And we're back at square one feeling bad in the morning.
Yeah, so common.
And, space is so huge to help our children, but we're also helping ourselves in those moments too. You have to help yourself first. You have to understand your own triggers. You have to understand your own areas that need improvement to help your child. And I'm grateful for this program that you started. I'm sure it's helped so many people.
Well, thank you. And I agree 100%. I think you can't be there in that supportive mode without some level of regulation for yourself, right? Like, you can't be supportive out of panic. You can't be supportive out of rage. You can't be supportive out of, heartbreak, really. Like, you might feel a lot of pity, but you have to have some level of internal regulation for yourself. And that's why a lot of what we do with the parents is also like give you some tools. How are you going to get through that moment? What's going to help you? A really unique part of space is that we put a lot of effort into helping parents to get more support from other people in their lives. Who can help you? Who can be there for you? And this is like, it's so obvious. It's the most obvious thing in the world that doing something is easier if people help you, right? Like, that's not groundbreaking news, but, and yet, if you think about therapy, it's like nowhere, because therapy is such an isolated bubble. it's so private and secret and confidential that it ends up being a very kind of isolated place. In space, we very actively encourage parents to get help from other people. Who in your life? Who's the relative? Who's the neighbor? Who's the friend? Who's the person that, cares enough to just be on the other end of a phone call when you're freaking out because your kid is driving you mad because you're trying not to accommodate? And like, who can you call in that moment that will just be there to say, it's okay?
I want to ask one more specific question for people who might be having this issue pop up at home. Reassurance seeking. As part of my OCD, I have relationship OCD. And recently I've become much more aware of how often I'm seeking reassurance from my wife. And she's a clinical psychologist. She admits herself she probably should have picked up on this a long time ago, but she was listening to one of our recent episodes with a woman who has relationship OCD. And she said, she came home, she goes, "Oh my God, I've been reinforcing your OCD all these years. Every time that you ask a question about whether or not I still love you and I give you the reassurance you're seeking, and I should have not been doing that." And I have to imagine this happens with kids a fair amount too, where whatever their OCD is trained on at the moment, they're seeking a lot of reassurance from their parents. They're going to their parent and saying, "This isn't going to happen, right? This isn't the thing." Or did I do something wrong? Is God angry with me? I imagine religious OCD pops up a fair amount.
Mommy, are you going to die when you leave?
You're not going to die, right? Like you're going to drive safely or whatever. And how should a parent be responding in that moment? Because again, it is in every instinct, both for my wife and for a parent of a kid, to say, "Of course I still love you. Of course I'm going to be okay. I'll be back. I promise you I'll be back." And they really shouldn't.
I will always go back to the recipe for a supportive response, right? It's a very simple recipe. There's just 2 ingredients, but that's my favorite recipe for how to respond to such a wide range of situations. And the 2 ingredients are the acceptance and the confidence, meaning I get it. That's the acceptance, right? I get it. This is a really distressing, worried thought for you. And I know you can handle that feeling. And you just stick with the supportive message that's like my North Star rather than the accommodation or the reassurance. I'll tell you something about the relationship reassurance in particular. We see lots of reassurance seeking in kids, but tons and tons of reassurance seeking. It could be, you won't die. There's not a spider. There's no burglar. I won't die. I won't fail school. Everything. Friends don't hate me. So many things. But there is also what you were describing of, do you love me? Right? Do you still love me? Do you love me? Tell me you love me. Tell me you love me. And I think that there is something really deep that happens when that starts to take over. Because when you feel like someone is constantly taking that from you, because they're making you say it, it's not a spontaneous expression of, "Oh, wow, I love you so much." You're being made to say it. And when you feel like someone is constantly taking that from you, what is lost is actually the experience of just giving, of just saying it because you want to, because it becomes this thing you must do. And that is mirrored on the other side, meaning if I am constantly taking from you, what I lose is the experience of actually being given to. It doesn't feel the same to make someone say, "You love me." That doesn't feel the same as having somebody just say, "I love you," right? It's a different emotional experience, but having one take over comes at the expense of the other. So cutting back on that form of accommodation actually opens up in the relationship room for some more natural, normal, and spontaneous, and ultimately more rewarding and gratifying expressions of just genuine love.
That filled me with so much anxiety when you said her response is going to have to be, "I get it. I get why you're asking me that question, but I can't accommodate that."
Yeah.
I mean,
it is so much anxiety. But Liam, when she the next day just happens to say, "I love you," not because you said, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Say you love me." it's going to feel a lot more powerful.
I wanted to hear your thoughts on how lifestyle, like sugar specifically, that I know that's kind of controversial with, does that affect kids with ADHD, anxiety, and OCD? And what are your thoughts on that, on diet and exercise with kids?
Yeah, I'll say this. I don't think that your diet and exercise are likely to cause a disorder like OCD. Meaning, if you're not predisposed to OCD, if you weren't born with like the OCD lottery, then you probably won't get OCD, regardless of whether you eat better or worse. That's not to say it won't affect you in other ways, but it probably won't give you like an anxiety disorder or give you OCD. However, if you are at all predisposed to those kinds of problems, then it does matter how
Yeah.
you take care of yourself and what kind of lifestyle you are leading. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you are predisposed to these problems and you're like eating tons of sugar and tons of caffeine and sleeping poorly and not exercising, then you're really not helping yourself at all.
What would you say to people who doubt that OCD is real or think it's just a symptom of something else?
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of many years ago. I trained in a clinic, and there was a psychiatrist there, and I never understood her way of thinking because she always diagnosed everything as pseudo, whatever the diagnosis was, right? Pseudo as in fake, right? Like, so we had a guy come in. He had a motorcycle accident, flew off his bike, in the hospital for like 6 months. She diagnosed him with pseudo post-traumatic stress. Somebody comes in, they're so sad, they feel guilt-ridden, they feel worthless, they're attempting suicide. She diagnosed them with pseudo-depression. And so I never really understood why the need to tack on the pseudo. OCD is real to the extent that any mental health diagnosis is real. What I mean by that is that our understanding of mental illness and mental like health problems, conditions is extremely primitive. It's extremely primitive. We don't have true understanding of any of these conditions. What we have is labels for observable symptoms. And so in that sense, I would say, yeah, maybe it's not real because we're not really able to explain the underlying, pathophysiology. This is like how hundreds of years ago, when people did not understand the function of the pancreas and of insulin and sugar mechanisms, they diagnosed diabetes by calling it literally sweet urine, which is the actual meaning of the Latin name for diabetes mellitus, right? Like it's urine is sweet because they didn't understand why. They just knew that some people had a set of symptoms that looked like that, and also that they would probably die pretty soon. But they were able to identify a syndrome and they gave it a name. And then over the past few hundred years, like we got a lot better at. In mental health, we are a primitive field. We are talking about the most complex organ by far in the human body, and we've been studying it for the least amount of time. In the sense that we use any mental health diagnosis today, OCD is a real thing.
I'm still wondering who determined they have sweet urine.
It was the intern.
Oh my
You
gosh.
discovered that. How can people learn more about space and what you do there at Yale?
Couple of things. There's a website for space. It is spacetreatment.net. So spacetreatment.net. I have been told by my sons, two of whom are teenagers, that .net is the worst domain type, and it's not cool at all. But there we go, spacetreatment.net. Yeah, there you go. And there's a Facebook page that you can follow, which is facebook.com/spacetreatment. space treatments. You have to note the plural there, so it's /space treatments. And there's a book that really lays out this approach. So if you're a parent, it's a way to work through it on your own. If you're a therapist, it's a way to work through it with a patient. But it's really written for a parent to try to do this on their own. And it's called Breaking Free of Child Anxiety and OCD.
If you could put a sign in every pediatrician's office about OCD, anxiety, whatever it might be, what phrase would you want to put up there?
Oof. Can I pick two or no?
Yes, please.
Okay, my first one is your OCD thoughts don't tell us anything about you except what you fear. And I think that's a really important thing for people to know, because it's so easy to start piling on interpretations and meanings, etc. But if I only had to pick one message to have, it would be that the world is full of people who used to have OCD.
Wow.
Oh, used to have.
Yes.
What do you mean?
I mean that this is a treatable condition. You can overcome this problem. You might still have some tendency to OCD. You might still have some symptoms of OCD, but the world is full of people whose lives were blighted and impaired and impacted severely by OCD, and today are not. And I want people to know that it is not a life sentence. And so, if you're the parent of a child with OCD, get them help, because it can be helped. It can improve. Whether you're doing space or you're taking them to therapy or whether it's some other intervention, know that there are so many people out there who used to have this problem and don't really. But that's why this podcast that you're doing is so important, because, anywhere that people can just open up a little bit their mind to just realize we're all walking around with these fake masks of normalcy our whole lives and making believe that everything is so perfectly okay within our own head. And it's oh, why is that other person behaving that way? We could all do with a little bit more compassion, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more kindness toward other people who really aren't all that different from ourselves. And so I really like that. And that's why I think it's great that you're doing this so people get to hear about it.
Yeah.
Dr. Eli Lebowitz, this was so wonderful. We learned so much. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to help families going through what can be a very difficult time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. You can't experience joy, and I think I'm a total idiot. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do with those voices?
Should I try cocaine?
Just get No, the answer is no, Liam. The answer is no. You should not try cocaine.